But the problem with self-esteem is when you lose the weight, if you're not okay with who you are personally, it's not going to do anything.
No.
All right. Welcome, everybody, to Lionz Den, episode 9. Please subscribe, like, share, let everybody know we're out there. Again, my name's Eddy.
And this is Daryl.
And this is Alex.
Today, we wanted to talk about self-esteem. Something we kind of talk privately about a lot. Self-esteem is really like the silent killer. It's one of those things that you really don't realize how potent it is, how much it really can mess you up until you kind of see it in action. So I thought it was a really important thing to talk about.
And also how many things it affects.
Yep. That's exactly
yes.
what I was going to say.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely one of those, it's like a tree that kind of starts branching out into everything. Mm-hmm. And Daryl and I have talked quite a bit because we're very similar self-esteem wise. It's not like I don't have my days where I don't feel great or don't feel on top of my game. But I mean, for the most part, feel good about myself, feel good about where I'm at in life. So we kind of talk about it. It's always kind of, well, where'd that really come from? Like, why do some people have it? Some people don't. Is it, encouragement? Is it people kind of always propped you up your whole life? And I know when we've talked about it, Daryl, I know that really wasn't the case with either of us. I mean, definitely me. No. It's not like I got roadblocks put in front of me. It's not like, no, you can't do that. But it was never, you could be president, you could be this, you could be that. I know for me, a big core of it has always been my faith. So I know there's a God. I know God created me. So if God created me, created everybody else, which makes me no better, no worse than anybody else. So that's kind of always been my baseline, and everything moved forward from there.
Yeah.
I think after talking about it more and kind of writing about it more, I think it's the other big aspect to it. I think love, which we'll be talking about in our next episode, I think love is a big part of that. So I might not have gotten, hey, you could be the next president or any of that kind of stuff, but I definitely always felt loved. And I know it was the same for you.
Definitely. Always felt loved and was always told I can pretty much do whatever I wanted to do. I'm thinking back to, because I've always been a confident person, sometimes confused with arrogance, depending on the person on the opposite end of it. But I mean, in my earliest days, I just always, like you said, thought that if this person can do it, then I can.
Right.
So I don't know. I really need to search to where that came from. A little bit of it is backing in the household.
Sure.
I might have mentioned this. Sometimes I forget what I spoke about here and what we speak about in conversations.
Right.
But not too long ago, I was talking with my mother. And she was saying how, as a kid, I just used to enroll myself into things.
Yeah, you did talk about that one in the podcast.
Yeah. And that stems from me just thinking that I could do whatever it is. And I didn't need approval. Yeah, sure, I'll sign up for this. And I just come home and tell them, like, I got practice next week and stuff. And but it had to stem from somewhere before that. And I want to do a little bit more searching and investigating to see what was really like the start of, or what was the seed that started the confidence that I have and have always had.
No, I mean, when you really start looking at it, it gets real interesting. Yeah. Because kind of some of the things that you would think it is, at least for me individually, really isn't. Like I said, it's not like I've been propped up my whole life and any of that type of stuff. And I still had, a lot of self-awareness, a lot of self-confidence. And for sure, like I said, a big part of that is, no doubt about it, my faith. But when I really look at it, I think and when I talk to or kind of have conversations with people who are kind of going through low self-confidence, low self-esteem, the tying thing there always seems to be either doesn't feel loved, didn't feel loved. Usually there's parental issues, could be brother sister issues, friends, kind of felt like on the outskirts with friends. That always kind of seems to be an underlying thing. And when I started noticing that, I started really doing some self-reflecting of, oh yeah, when I think about it, I never really had that. We all kind of come from our own issues with parents. And so it's not like, I had a super stable, dad that was there all the time. That definitely didn't exist. Yeah. So, when I start kind of checking off the boxes, I was like, oh, I didn't really have that either. And I didn't really have this either. So, why is it different for me? And it really does seem to be that love is that underlying factor. I don't know what you think.
I mean, so I'm on the complete other end of the spectrum. I've had major self-esteem issues.
Right.
So I think it's important when people talk about self-esteem to realize that it comes into every facet of everything. So if you struggle with self-esteem, it doesn't matter how big or how little something could be. You could have a trigger with it, right? Yeah. And I think people don't for you guys, if you don't have a point in your life where there's a consistent amount of things or a consistency with things where you feel like you have a low self-esteem, you kind of see what people are going through when they outside looking in, but it's really, really hard to kind of wrap your head around it till you go through it. Mm-hmm. And, the best example I could give is, I think the one for me was my weight loss. Mm-hmm. And kind of what I went through with that. Because when you have a problem with self-esteem, you have a problem, what's affecting it. You do a really good job of convincing yourself that it's other things outside of what the root is. And that buys yourself time. And what I mean by buys yourself time is it allows you to continue living in the things that you're going through because it's easier that way. I know in episode 8, you talked quite a little bit about when we were talking about, being better, talking about having to want it. Right. And I think it's the same thing with self-esteem. And when you're making a life change, I know for me with going through weight loss, when I was going through those self-esteems, I had to get to, how many times when we worked together and even when you were there, I would do a 6-week thing of I would eat nothing but white chicken, white rice, and some vegetables. You're not going to work. It's not going to work. Mm-hmm. Well, of course it is. It works for all these people. I'm telling you, I know it's not going to work because it's going to start tasting terrible. You're going to get sick of doing the same thing. And you really don't want to be doing it right now. Mm-hmm. I know you don't want to be doing it. And for me, when it finally clicked that I wanted to do it, it was easier for me to make that shift, and the reason I'm bringing that up is because I think it's so important when you have low self-esteem with something, you have to be honest with yourself, because until you're ready to make a change, there's nothing anybody's going to say or nothing you're going to be able to lie to yourself about until you're ready to do it,
mm-hmm.
Well, I know for Daryl and I, we talk about that privately a lot because you kind of see how debilitating it is. Yeah. And we're always kind of, like you said, it's really not on our radar. And again, it's not that I moved around a lot as a kid. I was always the new kid. It's not like I never felt like an outsider. I pretty much always felt like an outsider, but I didn't really need to feel like an insider because I was like, hey, I hope you like me. If you don't, then kiss my ass. Who the hell are you?
Yeah, I've never like thirsted for inclusion. Mm-hmm. I can rock with some stuff. I can hang out with people. And then if I don't really fit in with them, I have other stuff to do. I think that might come from that having other stuff to do, just always being busy.
Right.
So I didn't have time to, I guess, really have low self-esteem because I didn't have time to really think about it, to focus on whatever it was. And that could be a part of it. It's not the main thing. But I've just always been like a super, super busy person.
Yeah.
And not just like hard work busy. Just busy, just doing stuff all the time. My own little hobbies, interests, and then whatever I'm doing with friends, family, or whatnot. That I think in my younger years, if I did have a lot more downtime, I might have had some time to develop some self-esteem issues. But I don't think really looking back on it, I never really had that. So that could be a part of it. It's interesting, like going into it right now. We've talked about it before, but
it's really crazy how big the web gets.
Yeah.
And really how many things it touches. Because you would think, like in your case, I know, the weight was a thing. And even for Alex, always had a good head on his shoulders. And like you said, he definitely never came off as an overly confident person. So I knew that. But the weight thing, because to me, he always carried it well. It's not something I ever looked at like, oh man, Alex looks like he's quite a bit overweight and he's lose weight. Never really came across that way to me, so I never put a whole lot on it. And I was, there's a pool my mom goes to all the time. Hello to Mom and all her pool friends. But I go there, I try to go there every couple weeks, and I invited Alex at Lazy River. Super cool, kind of like graduates in. And
I love lazy rivers, by the way.
And
Greatest thing ever.
I was telling Alex about it, and I was like, hey, you got to come with. And it was like a quick no. Nope.
Hell no.
And I'm like, you to the pool. Why wouldn't you come with? And he said something to the effect of he would have to wear a shirt. And I remember as a kid, the chubby kids wore the white T-shirts.
Yep.
And so I made some smart ass comment to that effect of, oh yeah, like the chubby kids at the pool. And I saw immediately I hit a nerve.
I was like, yeah just like that, actually. Just like that.
I felt horrible because again, it just really wasn't.
Just something that you thought about.
I never put two and two together that's how he felt about himself. That's how he saw himself. And that's kind of through the lens he was viewing all that. It just wasn't on my radar. And then after I said it, I was like, oh, yeah, I guess that's prevalent for him. And I think it wasn't all that much longer that you started.
I mean, that was probably about 2-3 years ago. And I started this in January of last year was when I did it. And even when you and I were going through that exact experience, so just so everybody's clear, it never came off as malicious. Like when he said it, it wasn't like you're kind of being a dick. Like it wasn't like that at all. It was just a matter of fact. And I think it was, like you said, it never really hit home that, this one kind of strings a chord for me a little bit. So I started it in January of last year. And as you guys were talking about self-esteem, I can't stress enough that with somebody who's going through that, it has to be a change that you want to make. Telling people that they have to, showing them how they can do it, all are things that help. But until you're ready to do it, because self-esteem comes from something. So it's a lot like, in my opinion and my experience, it's a lot like a stereotype. Mm-hmm. So it's something that you're going through because other people are telling you that this is what you're going to be going through. And for me, it was a mental shift of when I finally decided that, hey, I'm done with this and I've got a game plan that I know I can stick to, I'm confident in. For once, it wasn't really something that I really came to you and said, hey, I need this drawn out. I need that. I just kind of had to go with what I knew was going to work for me and kind of stuck with it and had really great results. But self-esteem is crazy because it doesn't just, for me, it was the fact that I had excess weight, right? I mean, year to date, I'm down 80 pounds. Mm-hmm. And it was a big focus of mine to lose the weight. But the problem with self-esteem is when you lose the weight, if you're not okay with who you are personally, it's not going to do anything.
No.
Right.
So what I mean by that was I lost 80 pounds. I looked like a completely different person, so much that more people told me that they thought I was sick or dying of cancer.
No, I remember that.
Like
crazy.
Consistently, like on a daily. I mean, we went to a sales manager meeting and like 6 of the guys in there were like, hey man, you look good. You look like you lost weight. And like 3 of them pulled me aside. Like, are you okay? Like, yeah, man, I just eat a lot of salad. I appreciate your concern, but I'm doing okay. And where I'm going with that is it's a complete other side of the spectrum now. Mm-hmm. Like, so these same people that like made comments about where my weight was at, now it's, well, you're too skinny. You got to eat a cheeseburger. You know,
right.
Okay, so here, let's do this. You tell me where you want me to be at a weight.
Yeah.
And I'll just stick to it.
Yeah. Tell me my comfortable weight for you.
What's the best for you?
Yeah.
And people don't realize how much of a kind of a mind game that is, because losing 80 pounds is not easy. I want to be crystal clear. I didn't go to the gym. I didn't run 10 miles, you know, and we're not really using this for me to go into super far on what I did to lose the weight outside of intermittent fasting, which I'd be more than happy to talk about. But even after I did all that, people are still finding a way to kind of bring you down.
Yeah. Right. Take digs.
Yeah. Now you look too skinny. Are you sick? I mean, there was Facebook posts. I know you've seen them. You were off social media at the time, and I would call you and tell you, like, I'd put a picture up with like me, Katie, and Paisley, and people would comment and be like, damn, are you ill? Like on social media.
No. Yeah. I mean, I couldn't believe it. I was just like, oh my God. First of all, what's wrong with people?
Yep.
And I mean, and that was, again, a big reason why I thought we should talk about this topic today. Because one, the last podcast was, and the YouTube was Be Better, you know, kind of to your point, that's something I definitely see with advent of social media being so popular. You have influencers, you have, you know, everybody and their mother has a makeup line. They have this, they have that, look this way, look that way. And polar opposite ends of it. You have people who, I mean, I adore Lizzo. Hey, you know, be you, and who gives a shit? And you have other people that you have to look this way and that way. And yeah, I remember Daryl and I were talking about it, that Lizzo was somebody I got a kick out of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Me personally, for anybody. I don't care what race you are. I don't care what creed you are. I don't care if you're fit and trim. I don't care if you're not. Really don't care. As long as you feel good about yourself, that's kind of what turns me on. That's the kind of person I want to talk to, you know, shoot the shit with.
Character based.
Yeah, super, you know, strong character. Insecurity makes me really uncomfortable because I just don't really know. If for me, it's so obvious when it's there, and I just can't help but to want to address it.
Yeah.
But I mean, when Lizzo came on the scene, I was like, she don't give a shit, you know, and God bless her. Like her songs were super uplifting. I would watch her concerts, and she would take moments for everybody. Hey, I love myself. I feel good about myself. And I thought that was phenomenal. And you know, I remember Daryl and I talking about it, and he was like, I don't know if that's all the way through the way it seems. And I was like, I don't know, man. She seems pretty solid on it. And it was maybe a week after he said that she put out a post, and she was upset, crying, talking about how people talk about her, how it affects her. And, you know, there's somebody who had very good opinion of herself, you know, kind of knew who she was proud of who she was, and people got to them. And kind of to your point, I even see with, you know, movie stars that she's too this, she's too that, she's not that pretty, she is super pretty. It's like they're breaking down people that are making millions and top of millions about their looks.
Yeah, off of their face.
And they're too much this, too much that. They got this done, they got that done. And it was just like, and when that happened with you, one, I couldn't even imagine asking somebody that. Right. So even if...
Let's say I do.
Well, and that's kind of what you and I talked about. So God forbid, you know, you were sick. Hey, are you okay? No, I do have cancer.
Now what? What do you say?
Where are you going with that?
I'm really sorry to hear that. Thanks for bringing it up. Yeah. And I'm glad you noticed it, because I've lost 80 pounds.
Right.
Like, be a better person. Think about it before you ask. Now, and I get why people jump to that, because it's not common. It's not common to lose a lot of weight, and it's not easy to do. So I get why you jump to that. But you got to take a step back and realize that people that go through those type of things, like me, like I'm really emotionally sensitive, right? To a lot of things. A lot of stuff I'm really good at being like, now tune it out. I'm over it. Outside noise. But you know better than anybody else, it wasn't always like that.
Sure.
You know, everything was super sensitive for me. So I really go through that now. You lose the weight. I mean, I had somebody I worked with that we looked identical. And so this all started, and the guy who said this listens to this podcast. So I want to be crystal clear that it never came off negative, and it obviously worked because it was motivated that with no substances, not working out, just eating healthy and making better choices, I bettered my life. So thank you to this guy. But he came walking into work and looked at me, hadn't seen me. This guy had previously been in an accident, was like, damn, man, you put on a lot of weight since your accident. And I was like, yeah, man, I'm not Brandon. You know, my name's Alex. Oh, I thought you were Fat Brandon. And Fat Brandon stuck. So now I'm walking around work, and that's what everybody's calling me. So it worked out pretty perfectly because at work we were kind of doing like a peer-initiated weight loss competition. So just something we kind of wanted to get healthier, make some changes. My wife and I were getting ready to honeymoon the following year from that. So it was like a goal for me, you know, something to hit, going to Mexico, or not Mexico, Florida a couple months after. So I figured I'll get to see some incremental changes. So we started doing it, and first week I didn't have great success. I remember I called you and kind of told you what I was doing, what I was going through. Found out I wasn't really eating enough, kind of just, and like I said, I'm not going to go super in depth on the intermittent fasting, but I wasn't giving my body enough, and I lost a half a pound. And it was like week one, I was like, are you serious? Because if you don't know what intermittent fasting is you eat in a very small window compared to how many hours are in the day, and you control your portion sizes, increase the amount of food or increase the amount of meals that you're eating, but smaller portions. Whole point of the premise is that you get your body acting like a stove and resetting your metabolism. So it's very difficult to get used to, especially when you're like me. And
first couple weeks too.
Yeah, you're eating Arby's sandwiches all the time. You know, it's not an easy change. So week one to come out to lose a half a pound was extremely, extremely demotivating. Week two, I lost 10. So weight loss journey, when you start losing weight, it is an unbelievable feeling when you start noticing it. And this is going to sound very vain, but when you're somebody who goes through a self-esteem issue, what people think of you as something that is held very high. I'm not saying that's a right thing. I'm just saying that's a fact. So when people start noticing it, it becomes a high. You know, then it's like you're even more into it. But then it takes a weird turn. And with self-esteem, when it gets to a point where people, now what I said is people feel, so I saw a doctor, and the weight that I'm at now, for the record, is exactly where my doctor told me to be at. This guy's gotten a doctorate degree, and, you know, he's medical student. And people go through and they start telling you when they get to a point that they feel like you're looking too skinny, that now you look sickly. Well, so, you know, think about the mental game you're playing with somebody who's struggling with that when you're being called fat so-and-so on a daily basis, and it's all out of good fun, but it doesn't feel fun, especially for the person getting called it all the time. Right. And then you make a complete 180 and lose 80 pounds, and everybody just goes to, you're super sick. Right. You know, and now you're too skinny, you know, and I guess part of that, the point I'm making is don't put yourself through that until you're ready to, because it's not the weight that is holding you back. There's something that's along with it. For me, it was self-confidence. Sure. You know, so I knew if I could get my self-confidence back in check, that I could then be ready to tackle something like trying to get back to a weight where I was happy with myself. I mean, you talked about it in last episode. You wore one of your nicer shirts on the podcast. Anybody out there that says these $20 jeans, $10 jeans do the exact same thing that those $90 pair of Levi's don't. Now, it's got nothing to do with the money aspect of it. The ability to put something on that you're proud to wear because you've either made a body change or a mental change, regardless of what the price tag is, that right there, it makes you feel better. You can feel the difference, and that helps. It does help. And I know that sounds materialistic, but with anything in life, you have to have something that you work for, and you have to have a reward for that. Sure. You know, and the things that you hold back from yourself because of your self-esteem, going to the pool, taking your shirt, whatever it is, you have to reward yourself with those things that you didn't allow yourself to have. Now, notice I said that you didn't allow yourself to have. You never told me you can't come to the pool with me because you're fat.
Right.
Didn't even hint towards it, insinuate it. Yeah. My brain said, I can't go to the pool with you because I'm not happy with the way that I look.
Sure.
So when you get to a point where you check that off your list, it's so important to reward yourself because you have to experience the things that you held yourself back from experiencing.
Well, and I think a couple real important things there is, again, the spider web of it, that affects, and I know Daryl and I have talked about it a lot, that affects the people that you date, what you think you're worthy of, what you think you're not worthy of. That person's out of my league, this person's in my league, I deserve this, being treated poorly or whatever because you don't have a high opinion of yourself. Yep. I mean, it's brutal. And when you look at it, you're just like, wow. And I know when we came up with the concept of, hey, we want to do this Lionz Den. And I talk about this a little bit in the first Lionz Den short, but one of the things we really struggled with, we knew we wanted this format. We're sitting down talking, but there were other things we also wanted to do. We wanted to review different products. We wanted to talk about different things that we use, things that bring us joy, enrich our lives. And a lot of it is material. And I was the one that had a struggle with it because I was like, we're talking about God one day and then the best salvage jeans to buy right now another day. Does that come away weird? And I know you guys were definitely not in thinking about it. I hope it isn't. But the real point of that is exactly what we're talking about, that those things do make a difference. I remember specifically talking to you about clothes and you were like, hey, it doesn't matter. It's all the same thing. And I was like, it's not.
No,
and
it's
then
not.
He lost the weight. Next thing I know, I'm getting a call and, hey, what were those jeans that you told me about?
Where did you buy those from?
And he bought a particular gene that I remember, I think metrosexual might have been the word he used or something along those lines.
Yeah.
And
to describe them previously.
Yes. Yeah. Like, I ain't wearing that. And then he put them on and he was like, holy shit. My butt looks good in them.
My ass looks great in these things.
They're supposed to jeans.
Right?
Yeah. Your pants are supposed to do that.
And those things make a difference. And as you said earlier, and Lizzo's a good example, that it's not really about the weight. It's about how you feel in that. And the Lionz Den shorts, which will be coming out soon, that's really what it's about. We all have the same creator, which means, we all have things that are great about us. We have things that aren't so great about us. The Lionz Den shorts, even the Lionz Den is really about making the best of what you do have. There's things that we're all blessed with. Not everybody looks like Brad Pitt. That's okay.
Yeah.
But you're fantastic with this or you're fantastic with that. I think a lot of times us as human beings, we have difficulty with that.
Yep.
Because, okay, I'm great at math, but I really want to be able to go out with the supermodel and I can't. And ironic thing about that is that's usually the guy that it does end up with the supermodel because you're pretty brilliant and that's attractive.
Yep. Yeah. And standards of beauty are different across the board. That's what it's in the eye of the beholder.
For sure.
And then everybody tries to kind of meet the same standards, whatever standards we're getting from TV, movies, social media, and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, it's really about, who you are and what you bring to the table. And that's like where your true beauty comes from. Physical stuff fades.
For sure.
Your character should stick around and always be your character, what you have beyond whatever it is that you look like. And a lot of people don't think about that. They're trying to chase some physical thing that they want. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And it's changes. I mean, that's where like in China, the foot binding came from.
Yep.
Destroying their feet because that's how they were going to get selected for marriage. And every culture has some variation or multiple variations of that same thing. And it's all like superficial ideas that we have that kind of affect us negatively because it starts to change the way we hear and see things.
No,
like you said,
absolutely.
He said, you should come to the pool, my mom's pool. And you took it like, nah, I'm not coming to the pool because I don't feel comfortable. But it was never like you have to look this way to come to this pool.
Right, yeah. It was him being like...
Yeah, there was like no sign or anything.
It's like, hey, you're my boy. I'm going to the pool. Why don't you and your wife come to the pool and we hang out, maybe grab some lunch afterwards? I was like, you out of your mind?
Yeah, I mean, it was like immediate no.
And I was offended. I was like, why would you even ask me that?
The thing that I really took away from it was, wow, you're limiting the stuff you do because of how you feel about yourself. And that's what kind of hit home for me. And again, is you and I talk about a lot about this particular subject that, it happens for a lot of people. And something like that, it's not the end of the world. You go to the pool, you don't go to the pool. But again, when you start spinning that web, hey, yeah, my boyfriend hits me, but I deserve to be hit. Or, hey, I should only be with this type of person because I'm not so great either.
Yeah.
Or, this is tolerable because this is all I really deserve. I don't deserve anything better than this.
Right.
And it gets real grimy real quick.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And a lot of that is, that's all self-esteem based. Somebody telling you some kind of, to your point, Daryl, somebody telling you some ideal that's bullshit, which, by the way, is never accurate.
No.
So I've known dudes my whole life, hung out with guys. I've been with, every type of different type of girl imaginable, super pretty, whatever. And I quite honestly, the prettier, more insecure they are.
Yeah.
And I've never in my life, you guys could speak differently. I've never, hey, Eddy, I met this girl and her makeup was on point.
Yeah.
The cat eye that she did was so perfect, you couldn't imagine. I was immediately drawn to it.
Yeah.
So I have never in my life had that conversation with any dude ever.
No.
Now, I have had too much makeup. Yeah. Or somebody says something to that comment, but I've never had, oh my God, the makeup was on point.
Well, 90% of dudes won't know what a cat eye is. 99% of dudes.
So the problem with what you just said too is people don't realize how much, so that's called self-esteem. So that girl that feels like she has to put so much makeup on because that's what that guy's going to notice.
For sure. Or, I think and I've had these conversations, I think they feel more attractive with that or that they're hiding something.
Absolutely. And to realize that the only thing that's being noticed is not to the detail of what she's doing, but either it's too much or it's just enough. Right. And I guess the flip side of that is as a person, when you're judging somebody for something, you never know what's going into that. So you talked about 5 minutes ago, we've had that conversation 100 times. How do I sit here and talk about Jesus or anything related to faith, spirituality, and religion, and then turn around and talk about why spending the money to get this cologne or this face product is worth it? Mm-hmm. How is that related? I feel like it just doesn't mix. And I've told you, it's my opinion is I've said it since podcast 1 where you guys all gave me a hard time because I started going on a tangent of all being put on this earth for my happiness and not for my wife's happiness, which don't judge me. Go back and listen to what I actually said.
Double backing on that.
Yeah. Go back and listen to what I said. The whole point is it's just that self-care is important.
It is.
Because I'm not saying you have to go out and buy expensive cologne. If that's what gets you happy, do it.
Right.
The whole point is whatever about you or something about life that you wish you could experience, whether it's getting the attention for the money you're putting into your clothes. I'm not saying that's correct, but if that's the route that you're looking for, you owe it to yourself to put yourself in a position to try to achieve the things you thought you couldn't achieve and reap the benefits that you thought that come with it. Not because those benefits are always going to give you what you're hoping for, but they're going to teach you the lesson that you need.
Sure.
So if you're chasing materialistic things and your self-esteem and your way to deal with it, to be honest with you, I wanted to lose the weight because I thought that was going to help with my self-confidence. I thought I was very unself-confident because I was overweight. As I went through the process, I found out that wasn't true, which made me stick with it even more. The point that I'm making is you have to go down that road yourself. If you have a self-esteem issue, if you have a self-confidence issue, you have to go through that process, lift that stone over and realize that didn't solve all your problems.
Right.
Because then it forces you to start looking in different places. Because the end all be all that you thought was going to solve your problem just slapped you in the face with, hey, I'm still here.
Well, and like you said, I think at the beginning of this, the honesty about it is what's crucial there.
100%.
Because you're right. You know, let's say you're investing money in materialism and you think it's going to give you something and it doesn't, and you kind of ride that wave, come to the realization that, hey, you know what, I thought this was going to do it for me and it isn't. Or what I did get from that isn't what I really want, which is more often than not the case. I've seen it, done it myself, where you think you want a certain ideal and you end up getting it and you're like, I suppose it really all was cracked up to be. I mean, like I said, I've been dated girls where, hey, as a kid, that was the ideal. This is perfect. Playboy Playmate is unbelievable, fantastic. And then you kind of get there and you're like, yeah, that stuff they wrote on there was all bullshit.
Yeah, it is.
There's no truth to
they don't like walks on the beach.
None of it.
No.
Yeah. There's
reading poetry? Absolutely
not.
No.
Asking to name one poet.
Yeah.
So you do end up
read me a haiku.
Finding out that ideal doesn't really exist. And kind of to Daryl's point, and I think we're all saying kind of the same thing in a little different ways, is when you're the best you're going to bring in what's best for you.
Yeah.
Meaning in a relationship, in a job, in your friendships, in whatever that may be. And I think that's what Daryl and I talk about a lot. Even for me, I don't feel like I'm the greatest looking person in the world. I feel like my looks are there enough where it's not a hindrance. It's not fantastic. I ain't really worried about it, but I feel like I got personality for days. So if you don't dig that, then kiss my ass.
Well,
you know, the cover's good enough to read what's inside.
Bingo.
And if it ain't, then I don't want nothing to do with you. And I've always had that mentality, be it with jobs, friends, girls I've dated, whatever. And that really comes from that self-confidence.
It does. And that's the same with me. Like, as far as like physical stuff for me, I work out for me. Mm-hmm. I'm not trying to meet any kind of physical goals. At a point in my life, it was. Sure. I grew up watching Arnold and Stallone and, you know, all these stars. So having a certain type of physique was like a childhood goal of mine. And then I reached a point in my life to where I was like, okay, you know, you get there and it's like, okay, and then what?
Right.
You know, so for physical stuff, I look like what I look like. It's a combination of my parents. So some people like it, some may not. You know, that's, you know, to each his own. It's never bothered me. I've never tried to alter my appearance to suit what somebody else liked or were looking for or anything.
Right.
Because this is my face and this is what it looks like. But I mean, I've been, you know, successful in dating and making friends and stuff, which it has to come from somewhere. I think it comes from actually being genuine. So for one of my like life goals is to always be genuine. And some people either like it or love it. Some people misread it. There's people who think I'm a a-hole, and that's fine. That's their own thought, because I am upfront. And I do talk a lot of shit on a daily basis. You both work with me. I can't help it. Some days I talk shit and I'm like, just why are you saying this? You know, but I'll still say it because I'm not trying to hurt anybody's feelings.
Right. It's all jest.
Yeah, it's all
shit.
Yeah, and I think a lot of my confidence comes from that, because in my upbringing, my dad had his shop. He had an upholstery shop. And then you would come into the upholstery shop, and if your shoe was untied, it was 70 scenarios about why your shoe was untied or what happened to you. And literally, I just didn't tie my shoe.
Right.
So I got in the barbershop was like that, or when I would go to my cousin's house. And so I just always was ready for an onslaught of jokes or cracks at me about anything.
Right.
And then how I ended up, you know, combating that. It never made me feel bad. Some of the stuff they would say would be funny. You would have to have something back to say,
right,
you know. Yep. And if you didn't, they would just keep going, you know.
Now, looking back, and I would say the same thing with Alex, because Alex always had a real great sense of humor. Do you think because everything was put on Jump Street like that, that's why You never really had a chance to be insecure about it because you had to deal with it right away?
I think that helps, but I think some people you can create an insecurity from that too. But in my case and a few other people, you just develop this sense of humor. I chipped my tooth when I was young. I fell off a bike. I was a paper boy and I fell off a bike. And my cousin had skits about how I got beat up and somebody chipped some dude at school. He made up a name and everything, came up to me and chipped my tooth and told it to so many people before I even got there. So when I went to my cousin's house, they're like, yeah, I heard you got jumped at school and they chipped your tooth. And I'm like, what? I fell off my bike.
I was alone.
Yeah.
I wasn't even really with me.
I fell off my bike the other day. Nobody beat me up. And he's like, no, somebody beat you up. Kevin told me. And I'm like, he just saw me today. Like, he doesn't know. So, I got that thing where I was just like, and some people that would bother them. But for me, like, when I hear the story, it's funny. I'm like, no, there's nobody. I don't even know anybody named Curtis.
Right.
So, but I know that that's one of the things that helped my esteem and my confidence, because it was early in my life. I just had to deal with like
people talking shit,
opinions and people talking shit, and it became normal for me. So throughout my life, I kept finding myself in those situations. A lot of my military stuff, I had some instructors at a period in my career where they were just very blunt about everything. So if you did something and you thought it was really good and they looked at a standard and the standard was mediocre, they'd be like, yeah, you come back. I remember the exact scenario is I ran a 2-mile in 13 minutes and it was like, I ran like a 13:48. I weigh over 200 pounds. A 13:48 running 2 miles for me is hauling ass. So I came back, I was sweating. I'm like, I have achieved greatness. And the instructor didn't even look at me. He was like, 13:48. Yeah, that's not 100%. Go over here, get in the loser line. And I'm like, what? I was like 4 seconds off from being at 100%. And so me not having 100% was the equivalent of me taking 20 minutes to run that 2 miles. You didn't meet 100 or the extended scale, which if you score anything over 100, you didn't have to do the next portion of training. So I had 100. You have 3 events. You have push-ups, sit-ups, and then a 2-mile run. I scored 100 on the push-ups, I scored 100 on the sit-ups, and I scored a 98 on the run. And they put me in the group with the people who scored 60, 60, 60. 64.
You're 298 out of 300.
Yeah, and I am trash. I am high garbage.
You're running with the 150s.
And so at that point, it gets you like, no matter how good you think you're doing, you can always be doing better. That's what I took from it. And it didn't make me feel down. It was like, I guess I need to run a few seconds faster. And I'm like, oh, that's probably not going to happen because I was hot. I was like about to overheat running that. So I was like, well, I'm going to take this as a victory for me and go to this next part of training.
Well, and I think that's another important part about conversation, self-esteem, especially in a leadership role, especially in that where, you're training for something, there's war going on. I mean, this stuff is real serious, real quick. Be it physical training, any of that type of stuff, any type of leadership role, you're really walking that fine line of motivating and hurting feelings. And I've fallen on both sides where I went too far. For me, I'm not the guy to say you want to lose weight to if you're not serious about it.
No.
I'm not going to let it go.
No.
I'm not the guy to say, hey, you know what I've been thinking about? I really want to stop drinking. Don't bring that to me if you're not ready for that. And kind of to the point with the self-esteem that even for me, it's something I always have to be cognitive of. I mean, Alex, I was brutal with him when he worked with us. I remember, was it 3 bikes that one day?
Yeah.
So
that was like my first week
in sales. That's a hat trick.
Yeah.
So I mean, everybody knows hat tricks in hockey. You're a rock star.
I was beating my chest.
He's like, hey, sold 3 bikes, man, and this, and I'm like, that's your job, dude. Yeah. Go sell another one.
How many phone calls did you make today? I sold 3 bikes. I made 11 phone calls. You keep telling me like it's something I'm supposed to. Last time I checked, I hired you to sell motorcycles. So. You want me to tell you, great job for selling motorcycles at your job? Yeah. I was like, but it brings a different mentality when you look at it like that.
That's the exact same scenario that I come from and how I am about stuff too.
Well, and like I said, when you're striving, which really the point of Lionz Den is that's all we want for everybody is to strive for your own personal greatness, whatever that may be. Zero judgment on that. And to push yourself and hopefully find others to push each other to be that better person, to be that thing that you see yourself at, to be that thing that you always kind of wanted to be. And you do need a push. I mean, there's a big part of that. But there's also a fine line that you're going to unfortunately cross once in a while where you hurt feelings. Or, I mean, when he repeats stuff I said to him to other people, and it's been the same thing with my wife, I was like, damn, did I really say that? And I was like, yeah, I did. And I own it. It's not like I disagree with it.
Yeah.
But, and seeing, especially for someone like Alex, how much he's grown and all that, I'm grateful for that. I'm happy that didn't break him. But and with self-confidence, it's always that kind of thing where, as you said earlier, you don't want to be to a point where you're so cocky, nobody wants to be around you. And you also don't want to be to a point where you're always depressed and you feel crappy about yourself. So just to hang out with you got to pop some pills to uppers because you just got done hanging out with the person, So there's a happy medium in that.
Absolutely.
But something you want to be aware of.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you have to be aware of your audience when you're going through self-confidence and people that are going through self-esteem. Like for me, you knew it was working because when I needed my ass kicked, I just walked into your office and I wouldn't start with a very intelligent thing to say. I mean, I would lead with something I knew I was going on the chopping block for because the way I looked at it was the faster we get this started, the faster I'm going to get through it. And I'm sick and tired of being irritated about this. I know I'm wrong. So I'd go in there and just start full on conversation with Eddy, almost to a point where you could tell it would just irritate him so much where he was like, all right, man, I see what you're doing. You said you were looking for it. Here it is. And that's the flip side of it. So Eddy's the type of person, if you ask for help, don't ask me for help if you don't want it. Because if you tell me you want help losing weight, tomorrow when you're eating 2 slices of cheese pizza, the extra larges, and dunking it in 4 quarts of ranch, I'm going to walk up to you and say, I thought you were trying to lose weight. Yeah. So
accountability.
Yeah. It's not coming from a place of being malicious. It's coming from a place of don't go to the doctor if you don't want them to tell you what's wrong with you. It's pretty simple. And you as a person, and that's why I made the comment when I first started talking about self-esteem, you got to be ready to make that.
Yeah.
Because 9 times out of 10, I'm going to tell you, when you go down the road of trying to make an adjustment with your own self-esteem or your self-confidence, whatever you think it is that you've been trying to achieve for so long to make that switch turn off, in my experience, it doesn't do it.
No, I think you're right.
In the scenario with your hat trick, this made me laugh. I've heard that before too, but I had that. me and Eddy did not know each other, but I had that same thing. I had a soldier who told me like, "Hey, drill sergeant, I finally hit the 300-meter target. It's been tough for me to hit it." And I was like, "Oh, stop fucking training and we'll have cake and ice cream because you did your fucking job. Your job is to engage targets, and you did it finally. It took you a long time, and you finally did it. So I don't understand why you're telling me that you did your job.
Right.
I have no clue. Like, I actually would have kept it a secret because that means you haven't been doing your job the entire time.
Thus far.
You've just been wasting the citizens' money, shooting rounds down range and not hitting anything. So, and when you said that, it reminded me of that exact scenario. But I'm not trying to demean that person when I tell them that.
No, of course.
Because I do want them to engage that 300-meter target on every time, but I want them to know that that's the expectation.
Exactly.
So.
And if you did it once, you could do it again.
Yeah. So go do it again.
Right. But if you're like, oh my God, I did it, you almost make it where it's unobtainable.
Yeah. That was satisfactory. Mm-hmm. I remember that one time you'd be old. I remember that one time I hit the 300-meter target. Right. No, it's just what you do. It's just what you go out and do. You go out, if your job is to engage targets, if your job is to score points, sell bikes, whatever it is, do your job. And when you do it once, that doesn't mean that it's done.
Right.
Go and do it again.
Right.
And I like that. But some people do revert from that. It doesn't build them up. At least not initially. Some people take that and they crumble. And when you notice it, if you notice it, that's when you, as a leader, you have to make that adjustment because specifically you want to build that person up. But some people don't like to hear stuff that way. But in my case, a lot of my guys got used to it.
Well, I think with you, the difference, and I obviously wasn't there, but I think the difference with the way you had it received was how you delivered it. So you could easily make that statement that you made to that person about hitting the 300-meter target and made it as if it was a punchline. Made an example out of the statement that you were making because you made the statement to that person to make a statement to your whole platoon, your whole unit, whatever the case may be. You didn't. You made the comment because you were trying to teach the lesson of this is your expectation. And I think the delivery, a lot of times, like if I kept coming into your office and I felt like you were just making comments because you were getting a rise out of it because it was funny for you,
right?
I probably wouldn't keep going in. I kept going in because I would get the delivery that would be harsh, what I needed, but there was always a follow-up with an action to take afterwards. And if I trusted and I took the action, which I didn't always do, but when I didn't and I touched the stove and it was hot, I learned it was hot. And then the next time I figured, well, screw it, what do I have to lose? And then I would take the advice and then it would work out. And then you start building trust.
Right.
And then that's when you can really make an impact is when you build that trust because I know the information I'm getting isn't being, guided towards a certain area. It's genuinely trying to help. And I know you as a type of person that if you're going to make that comment, not saying you couldn't be a smart ass if you wanted to be, but I don't think you're the type of person that when you give that delivery, it's a delivery that you're saying that it's like you say it and then you look back at everybody. Did everybody hear that? Did that across everybody? No. That was a very congratulations. You did what I expect you to do because you wanted that person to know. I'm glad you did it. Just so you know, it took you way longer. I don't know if I'd be celebrating that. Yeah. Celebrate the fact that you hit it. Now figure out how to hit it again. Right?
Exactly. And then I think of all this conversation, I think you hit it on the head, Daryl, that being genuine is really where it should begin and end.
Yep.
Wherever you're at with your self-confidence, I think probably the most attractive thing about anybody is just being genuine, you are who you are. And if you're insecure, hey, I'm insecure about this stuff, and you just lay it out there, I think people would be shocked how effective that is and really how disarming that is. Because you're just kind of laying it out there. This is who I am. I'm aware of my faults. I'm aware of this. Own it. And I think that even if you're not to that point where you're a super confident person or what have you, as long as you're genuine, you're going to bring in what you want. You're going to bring in people that are going to be supportive, maybe help you through that, maybe take you to that next step. But the genuineness is what really has to be there.
Yeah.
And I think at the end of the day, that's where your self-confidence comes from. That's where my self-confidence comes. That's where your self-confidence comes, is knowing at the end of the day, we are try to be the best that we can be. We certainly have our faults. We're far from perfect, but we're always trying to put out our best. Nothing's ever really malicious, not out there trying to hurt people. We see the best in people. And again, a lot of that is where faith comes from. So for me, I see everybody as a child of God. I'm not judging. I mean, Bill has been here a bunch of times. He was kind of talking about what he went through addiction. I'm not judging your soul, but you got to get your shit together.
Right.
You have to figure it out. You got one shot at this. Is this what you want the rest of your life to be?
Right.
It's not a judgment on your soul, not saying you're a bad person. You're making shitty decisions today.
Yeah.
The great thing about this life, it could be about if you're in a relationship that you're unhappy in, you could leave it right now. Tomorrow's a whole new day.
Yep.
You're in a job that sucks, you could leave it right now. Tomorrow's a whole new day. You're not happy about how you look, feel, any of those things. You start making positive changes in your life today.
Yep.
Tomorrow's a whole new day. I mean, that's the beauty thing with life. And anytime you're making that assessment, because I'm very similar to Daryl, where a lot of times people take it the wrong way. You know, I'm not judging your soul, making a judgment today. Mm-hmm. You know, hey, I lied about this, this, and this, or I did this. Well, that was shitty. You're a shitty person today. Yeah. Great news is you can apologize to that person, you can make amends, and you can be who you want to be tomorrow. Yep. And that's all that matters. Yeah. You know, our pasts aren't what matters. How we feel about ourselves 20 years ago doesn't matter. It's how do you feel about yourself today? Exactly. Because today is going to propel in tomorrow. Yep. So I don't know if you guys had some more stuff to share with the self-esteem.
No, I got a lot of my stuff out. I think that's, I mean, what you just said is really true. Like, how you see yourself today is going to affect how you see yourself tomorrow. So I think it should start out with positivity. So see yourself in the best light. I mean, who's going to love you if you don't love yourself? So start with yourself. Amen. You know? Yeah, 100%. And the other thing too is, like, with me, one of my confidence things is that I look at the people who judge or have comments, you know, and I grade them, not judge them, but grade them. So if I just played a game, say I played football, and some guy's sitting on the bleachers eating Doritos, and he tell me I ran for 100 yards, but I could have ran for 150. I'm looking at him and I'm like, you didn't run for any yards. You didn't run at all
with nacho cheese and jalapenos.
Yeah. So his opinion is put in the area of it's non-existent. Right. You know? So I look at, like, the credibility and the value of the person who is saying something, and if it is credible and it's valuable to me, then I'll assess it and either make adjustments or not. Right. And then I'll keep moving. But you do have to just dissect it, because a lot of times people let what's said to them by people who aren't really qualified to say whatever it is they're saying hold too much weight and too much water. Yeah. You know.
Well, and it's because everybody has an opinion. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's just remembering that everybody has one. Yeah. You need to figure out whose it is that you actually want to listen to. Yeah, sure. Who's actually make a difference for you.
Yeah, and I mean, I would say at the end of the day, God loves you. I mean, you're created in His image. Yeah. Your mother loves you. Yep. Somebody out there loves you. Stop being so hard on yourself. And if there is something that really bothers you, you know, start making that change today. It could be something very small.
Yeah, because all those people can love you. If you don't, like you said, none of it matters. Right. It doesn't matter that God loves you. It doesn't matter that your mother loves you, your sister, your wife, your brother. If you don't, we talked about that from episode 1. Mm-hmm. You know, it feels like you're alone.
Definitely. Well, thank you guys so much. Absolutely. We'll see everybody in the next episode. Again, keep an eye out for the Lionz Den shirts. Those will be hitting real soon. And please like, comment.
Subscribe.
Reach out.
Comments. We appreciate the comments.
Yes, we had somebody reach out. I had an opportunity to do that, and I know for me it was a great experience. And you were involved in that, so you know who you were. Thank you very much. That was
and our thoughts and prayers are with you, brother.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. So. Thank you.